If baby could talk, she'd say a lot. You'd know what she's thinking and what makes her happy. But unfortunately, baby can't talk or remind you you're the one taking her to daycare today, and she won't speak up if you drive straight to work like any other day and never think to look in the backseat. Every year, dozens of kids die from heat stroke in cars. No one is perfect, so set a reminder and always look before you lock. Where's Baby? Paid for by NHTSA.
It's a mess. It's a mess like nobody's ever seen before. This is the most embarrassing moment in our country, in our country's history. It's a military defeat. It's a psychological defeat. Russia, China, Kim Jong-un, North Korea, everybody, they're all watching this disaster, and they're laughing at us, and they're having a good time.
That is a fact, Jack. That, of course, President Trump from the Sean Hannity program last night on the Fox News channel. And, I've got to tell you, General Keith Kellogg was on the Fox News channel this morning, now retired. 3-star general, lieutenant general, Army. Had served as President Trump's national security advisor for a period of time as well, explaining that they had a perfectly sound plan that was conditions-based for getting out of Afghanistan, and of course they would have done everything in the correct order. Evacuating the most vulnerable Americans and American allies, and doing it quietly and doing it from Bagram Air Base. Really what they kind of need to do now is, and there was apparently a plan to send the 82nd Airborne in, to parachute in to Bagram Air Base and take it back from the troglodytes, because there are 2 major runways there. It is a 30-square-mile base, and it is easily defended and defensible. You can field Apache attack helicopters, and you can also, with, 32 acres of apron or tarmac space, you can park up to 20 C-17s, and you could accelerate the evacuation. But the nitwits and nincompoops I'm being polite, in the Biden administration, they decided to allow Bagram Air Base to be overrun by the troglodytes, denying us that military facility to get out of Afghanistan. And personally, I think that we should have left 2,500 troops in, keep the lid on things, and continue to use Bagram as a base of operations where we had taken no casualties in a year and a half, and we can still work with the Afghans to reach out and touch the bad guys and run operations of our own if we wish, special operations, denying Afghanistan the base, which is, Al-Qaeda means the base. And they always look for a base. And Afghanistan is, once again, that base, thanks to Joe Biden. And are we going to have to go back in? Gosh, I don't know. Let's get through a bit of Jen Psaki quickly, and then I want to get to this joke National Security Advisor boy, the cadaverous, translucent Yale and Yale Law School grad, Jake Sullivan, who's never had a real job in his life. He did work for Hillary Clinton, tried to get her elected president. He failed. And I guess he's in charge of the evacuation of Afghanistan, turning it over to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. And I guess he failed there, too, unless this is what they consider success. He blames himself for Hillary Clinton losing the presidential race, and that's good. And Hillary Clinton says that Jake Sullivan is likely to be a future president of the United States because it's a great big circle fest in a hot tub with these dimwits. All right, let's get to some Jen Psaki from yesterday. Being asked by reporters about how many Americans are there in Afghanistan, kind of an important question. The range is between 11,000 Americans outside of the wire, as it were, outside of the ring of death, the circle of death that the Taliban has placed around the Hamid Karzai International Airport. That's KIA. HKIA is the designation of the airport for international purposes. A reporter asking Jen Psaki, how many Americans are there?
How many Americans are in Afghanistan? both inside Kabul and outside Kabul? And should they get priority on evacuation flights? John Kirby said that it's going to be a mix of SIV applicants and Americans, but should those remaining American citizens get priority, and how many are there in the country right now?
Kabul Kirby said that over at the Pentagon, said, oh, well, it's going to be a mix. And then Jen Psaki, a.k.a. Colonel Kleb from Russia with Love, she explains that, and I was describing, we were discussing it this morning, Victor and Michael and myself, and it's like, you know, when you go to board a United Airlines or American Airlines flight, and they say people that need of special assistance with children or walkers, and then uniformed military, active duty military, and then of course Premier Club and priority members, and all of that good stuff. And then Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4. I'm always in Group 5. Group 5 are boarding. Well, Jen Psaki says, well, all groups get priority all at once.
Well, we are prioritizing a number of groups: American citizens, embassy employees and their families, our locally employed staff, SIV holders and applicants, applicants who would be eligible for P1, P2 refugee programs, which includes, by the way, translators who may have assisted media organizations and others. There have been, how the process works, I should tell you, is that there are individuals who will self-identify as American citizens. That number is around 11,000. Beyond that, around the country. Beyond that, though, there are individuals who may not have self-identified, who may come and request assistance and come to the airport. We're going to work to assist, of course, American citizens, but we also have a responsibility and obligation to help the men and women who served by our sides, many of the sides of your colleagues as translators and as interpreters, and our locally employed staff and others.
Now, wait, how many groups are prioritized then? Everybody except the Taliban is prioritized, I think, there, and really they're the ones who are really prioritized because they're getting everything they ever wanted, including the nation of Afghanistan, the city of Kabul, the American embassy, Bagram Air Base, all of the equipment, billions of dollars worth that we left behind, which the Chinese are going to love, the Iranians are going to love, the Russians are going to love, the Taliban is going to love, Al-Qaeda is going to love, and it's all on Joe Biden. And what is with this self-identified? So every group is prioritized, right? Pretty much every group that went, and that's what are U.S. citizens being prioritized. One of the things she said was not yes. She didn't say American citizens are being prioritized. She said everybody. You know, active duty military, handicapped, people with children, premier card holders, club members, frequent flyers, groups 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all being prioritized, which means nobody's being prioritized, and it's a mad rush for the exits. Jen Psaki and a fake White House. And what's with this self-identified? Like Rachel Dolezal self-identifies as black. Elizabeth Warren self-identified for decades as a Cherokee Indian because Papaw had high cheekbones. And when it is self-identified, so if you're like a bearded loon and you show up and self-identify as an American, that's good enough. It continued.
So just to confirm, 11,000 in the entire country, not just in Kabul?
Well, I would just say that's the self-identified number, right? So, but we will continue to provide assistance, and we are prioritizing American citizens. We are also working to get additional officials out who have played an important role.
Yeah, who have played a lot of different, and our feckless, hapless White House press corps. Just by the way, let's get to Jake Sullivan because he is. I love this tweet that came out yesterday. Reporter asked Jake Sullivan if U.S. forces will remain in Kabul until all Americans are out. Till all Americans, we've got that right. We're going to get to that because that's kind of an important question. I've got to say. The National Pulse. The National Pulse is a website, nationalpulse.com. Stunning poll reveals Trump would win election held today as nearly 1 in 10 Democrats regret their 2020 vote. Only 1 in 10? What happened to the Democrat Party? It's just impossible to believe what has happened, what they've done. Stunning new poll numbers from Rasmussen report suggest nearly 1 in 10 Democrats regret their vote. Let's take the poll again in a week because this is not getting better. This is getting worse. And they say, well, at least 11,000 self-identified, whatever that means, Americans outside the wire in Afghanistan with the troglodytes outside who slake their thirst on the blood of infidels. Amazing. With 12% of moderates saying the same thing, that they regret their vote, 14% of black Americans expressing regret. Well, you should have been listening to me, everybody, moderates, African Americans, Democrats. Listen to me. All right, so here's Jake Sullivan. His father was a reporter and a school teacher. His mother, a school administrator. He went to Yale University and then Yale Law School. He then interned with 2 Democrat judges and then went to work for, including one on the Supreme Court, and then went to Yale, and then he went to work for Democrat politicians. And he's only worked as a political weasel for left-wing Democrats like Hillary Clinton, who woke up once again today face down in a pool of her own vomit, dried on the kitchen floor with an empty gallon box of cheap New Zealand Chardonnay, empty, with the Secret Service tisk-tisking. All right, so let's get to Jake Sullivan. He is allegedly Joe Biden's national security advisor, and he was vice president Joe Biden's national security, and he has no background in actual national security. He's just a Democrat Party apparatchik. So reporter question and answer with Jake Sullivan, who is translucent, and he's, there's some of those jellyfish that you can see through. He's like one of those. And he is Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor for the United States of America.
This mission is not complete by August 31st, and there are Americans and Afghan allies who remain there. Will U.S. troops stay until everyone is out, or will they leave?
So I'm not going to comment on hypotheticals. What I'm going to do is stay focused on the task at hand, which is getting as many people out as rapidly as possible, and we will take that day by day.
So you can't commit to bringing back every American.
So you can't, the reporter is like George S. Patton compared to the national. So you can't commit, you mean won't commit, to keeping U.S. troops there until all Americans have been safely evacuated? I'm not going to comment on hypotheticals. It's not a hypothetical. The question is literally not, and the reporter, if she had a couple of brain cells, the correct rejoinder would be, that's not a hypothetical question. I'm asking you whether you will keep U.S. troops in Afghanistan until all U.S. citizens are evacuated. Question and answer with the translucent Adams family member, Jake Sullivan.
Will the U.S. government commit to ensuring that any Americans that are currently on the ground in Afghanistan get out?
That's what we're doing right now. We have asked them all to come to the airport to get on flights and take them home. That's what we intend to do.
That's what we intend to do. That's what we're doing right now. No, they're outside the wire in Taliban territory, in Indian territory. And you're telling them, make your way to the airport. But again, put a statement out, and my friend Sebastian Gorka sent it along this morning, the statement from the State Department, where they say, please be advised that the United States government cannot guarantee your security as you make this trip to the Hamid Karzai International Airport. They're like, hey, make your way to the airport, and we can't protect you, and the Taliban's out there, so good luck making your way to Osama bin Laden International Airport. Jake Sullivan.
The Taliban have informed us that they are prepared to provide the safe passage of civilians to the airport.
Right.
And we intend to hold them to that commitment.
You're going to hold them to that commitment. We're trusting the Taliban to provide safe passage. Now, what's going on today? Have you seen the video of the woman shot in the head and dead on the ground? And the little child, probably, a 4-year-old boy, it looks like, appears to have been shot in the head and is being carried away while his older brother looks on in horror. And, of course, there's the video of the guy being thrown in the back of the pickup truck and kicked in the head. And all the troglodytes, the bearded, smelly troglodytes, with their AK-47s, Russian weapons, and they're destroying the world. They're destroying the whole place. And there's Jake Sullivan saying that they're calling on the Taliban because the Taliban, it's just amazing.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, Anchorman doesn't believe it. Jake Sullivan yesterday, and the Taliban, they still think the Taliban is France or something, and that you can take their word for something. Take their word for the fact that they're going to murder everybody that they can.
Ultimately, it's going to be up to the Taliban to show the rest of the world who they are and how they intend to proceed.
Yeah, the Taliban has shown who they are. They're murderous, blood-soaked troglodytes from hell who decapitate, enslave, rape, massacre, murder. I mean, honestly, that's we know who they are. We don't need a refresher course. And they're pretending that they're trustworthy. The headline here in the Washington Post, Taliban allowing, quote, safe passage, end quote, from Kabul to U.S. aircraft. You people are severely brain damaged. That's all I have to say to you. Hey, if you're like most people, and most people are, you probably carry a balance on your credit cards, am I right? And if those cards come with high interest rates, and they do, take a look at the little print there, you need to call my friends at Lightstream. Lower your interest rate, save a whole lot of your hard-earned money with a credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream. At Lightstream, their rates start at 5.93% APR with auto pay and your excellent credit. You can get a loan from $5,000 American dollars to $100,000 American dollars with no fees, and you can even get your money in your bank account as soon as the day that you apply. Just for my listeners, apply right now, get a special interest rate discount, and save even more of your money. The only way to get this discount is to go to lightstream.com/plant. lightstream.com/PLANTE. Subject to your good credit approval, rates range from 5.93% APR to 19.99% APR and include a 0.5% auto pay discount. Lowest rate requires your excellent credit. Terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject change without notice. Visit lightstream.com/plant for more information. Yeah, Jake Sullivan. No, well, I've always depended on the kindness of strangers. This is sad and pathetic. The Taliban are a gang of anti-Western, mass-murdering, genocidal lunatics from a medieval hell, and the Biden administration is depending on them to provide, and the Washington Post, to provide safe passage.
The Taliban also has to make an assessment about what they want their role to be in the international community.
There's only one Chris Plant. The Chris Plant Show.
Let's go to the telephones. I still have more crazy government official losers coming up. Let's go to John calling from Manassas, Virginia. John, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris, I love talking to you, man. This is great. Not the situation, but talking to you.
Uh-huh. Thank
Can
you.
I ask a question?
Sure.
Because you're a much more learned man than I am, even at my age, although I'm much senior than you. Can you explain to me how someone identifies as a U.S. citizen?
Well, the self-identified, the language that they're using is that they've self-identified as U.S. citizens. Maybe you have to show an ID.
Time,
that would be racist, though, if you had to show an ID, right?
At tax time, can I self-identify as German and not pay federal taxes?
Well, that's a good question. That's a fair question. Self-identify as something other than American.
Or where I'm at in the state of Virginia, can I self-identify as a citizen of West Virginia and not pay Virginia taxes?
Or a citizen of Florida, where you don't have any state income taxes. How do you self-identify? Well, the Democrats are big on self-identifying. They're men self-identify as women. Their women self-identify as men. Chaz Bono's in there somewhere. They self-identify as black, like Rachel Dolezal, and as Cherokee Indian, like Elizabeth Warren. They self-identify as a lot of them, not usually as Americans, though.
This is the Chris Plant Show.
Lecturing Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook, and by extension, Jack Dorsey on Twitter, and by extension, the New York Times and the Washington Post, for trampling free speech. When the Taliban was asked a question at a press conference, Joe Biden hasn't had a press conference. So asked, and they said, well, maybe you should ask questions of corporate media like Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg about protecting free speech. And it's true, and Twitter still allows the Taliban on Twitter and the Ayatollah in Iran on Twitter, but not President Trump. Now, honestly, somebody's a fascist in this story, but I don't want to leap to any rash conclusions as to who it is. It's Mark Zuckerberg, and it's Jack Dorsey, and it is the people that run the New York Times, the Washington Post, who are anti-free speech, and they're leftists and all of that good stuff. Newport News, Virginia. Newport News School Board votes to defy state law requiring transgender student protections. Does that mean condoms or something? What is that exactly? That's right. This is the Daily Press has the story. And Matt Jones, Newport News. Newport News School Board voted Tuesday, that's yesterday, to ignore state guidelines on protecting transgender students rather than change its policies, which the law required it to do by the start of the school year. I know Michael's son, Max, headed back to school today. They're starting school on Wednesday, which seems kind of weird, on August 18th, Wednesday. Administrators had asked the school board to change current policies and, more explicitly, protect trans people from discrimination. Along with the policy, the district planned to assemble a group to change the district's procedure documents to fit state guidelines. But Newport News, one of the largest school districts in the state of Virginia, and among the first in Hampton Roads area to refuse to follow the law passed in 2020. So, so the Democrats, this is what the Democrats are busy doing. You know what I'm talking about? Yes, you do. All right, let's get back to Jake, the ultimate pajama boy. And it's Maureen again. So, that Jake Tapper, it's not Jake Tapper this time. It's Jake Sullivan. Jake Sullivan is kind of the ultimate pajama boy. The New York Times the New York Post, not the New York Times. The New York Post has the headline today, Murder by Incompetence. Biden spurs Afghan allies while letting border get swarmed. And it's absolutely true, of course. It is murder by incompetence, and it is a complete tragedy and calamity that was brought on entirely. There are still papers trying to blame Trump for this. Trump hasn't been president for more than half a year. This is not Trump's plan. This is not what Trump had intended to do at all, not by any stretch of the imagination. Betsy McConaughey at the New York Post. For months, President Joe Biden has opened the southern border to illegal immigrants, even as he has turned a deaf ear to our Afghan allies begging to come to America to escape a Taliban onslaught. Now, And it's true, of course. Some 20,000 pro-American Afghans and their families are in danger of being killed in a massacre by the Taliban because the president, Biden, refused to speed up the bureaucratic 14-step visa application process created by the Democrats in Congress and medical exam requirements for them to evacuate to the United States. It's death by red tape. And, of course, meanwhile, Biden is allowing more than 200,000 mostly Hispanic migrants, mostly but not entirely from all over the world, to walk across the southern border into the homeland every month. We had people from Haiti and Cuba and from Africa and from Central Asia, from India and Pakistan. I'm telling you. And it's the Taliban, the Washington Post says, allowing safe passage from Kabul to the U.S. airlift. BS. The Wall Street Journal has that line, Taliban blocks routes to Kabul airport, hampering evacuations from Afghanistan. So how do you square that with the Washington Post headline? Also, a Los Angeles Times photographer has photographed a good deal of the savagery and the brutality of the Taliban troglodytes, the cave-dwelling loons that are the Taliban. Photojournalist for the Los Angeles Times captures graphic images of wounded Afghans after Taliban fighters used lethal weapons to maintain crowd control at the airport. Because we don't control the area outside the airport, the Taliban does. And Americans are being told by the Biden White House to make their way to the airport because the Washington Post says the Taliban is allowing safe passage. But, of course, the Wall Street Journal says the Taliban has blocked the routes. The Los Angeles Times photographer has produced digital photographs and put them out on the internet of the savagery and the barbarity that is taking place just outside of the wire. All right? And the pictures are truly disturbing. And there were children shot in the head, women shot in the head, people being beaten with rifle butts, people being shot, just shooting into the crowd and laughing out loud. This little boy who's apparently been shot in the head with his mother dead on the ground beneath him and his older brother looking shocked and crying standing next to him. And this is what's really going on. What our news media is doing is another thing altogether. These people and the Biden White House National Security Advisor and the Jen Psaki say, well, the Taliban have to decide how they want to be perceived by Facebook or something. Well, Facebook hasn't banned them. They banned President Trump, but not the Taliban, because the left-wing fascists are really, in line with the radical Islamic fascists on so many levels. Tearing down statues. Again, the Taliban is tearing down statues in Afghanistan, and the Democrats are tearing down statues here. And they're tearing down George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, trying to tear down Andrew Jackson renaming schools named for Jefferson and Washington and Abraham Lincoln, of all things. All right, let's go to soundbite number 11. Jake Sullivan, the Addams Family pajama boy, talking about, this is great. No, Joe Biden he's Mr. World Leader. He's Mr. Foreign Policy. He's going to make everything better after Trump ruined everything. Remember this? Jake Sullivan.
He has not yet spoken with any other world leaders. Myself, Secretary Blinken, several other senior members of the team have been engaged on a regular basis with foreign counterparts, and we intend to do so in the coming days.
That was yesterday afternoon. Joe Biden had not spoken to a single world leader, to a NATO leader, to the NATO leadership, the Secretary General of NATO. He hadn't spoken. It's a NATO operation in Afghanistan. We're the lead nation in NATO. We pay more than our fair share. President Trump made NATO stronger by compelling them and shaming them, compelling them to pay their fair share, what they had committed to pay, and he made NATO stronger. Joe Biden is destroying NATO this week. And Tony Blinken, stinking Blinken and nod. He called somebody. Who cares? He's another feckless pajama boy himself, for that matter. But Joe Biden had not called anybody. And then because of that disgraceful answer by Pajama Boy, Joe Biden yesterday called the Prime Minister of Great Britain and had a conversation with him. They're furious, of course. Australia is furious. Everybody's furious. Jake Sullivan. They've gotten billions of dollars of U.S. equipment, helicopters, drones, rifles, armored vehicles, and you guys just absconded and left all this stuff behind. What, you going to get all of these billions in equipment back, or turn them over, these pieces of equipment, to the Chinese and the Iranians and the Russians and the Taliban?
We don't have a complete picture, obviously, of where every article of defense materials has gone, but certainly a fair amount of it has fallen into the hands of the Taliban. And obviously, we don't have a sense that they are going to readily hand it over to us at the airport.
We don't have, listen to the cowardly fecklessness of these inept clowns. We don't expect them to hand it over at the airport. No, they're going to murder people with it. And there was a reporter from Australia that asked a question because Joe Biden has infuriated all of our allies.
There's a lot of anger in Australia this morning about the way this has played out.
There's a lot of anger in Australia this morning about the way this has played out. There's a lot of anger in Britain about the way this has played out. There's a lot of anger in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia at the way this has played out, and I'm not even kidding. I'm not kidding. Now let's go to Jennifer Griffin of the Fox News Channel. She covers the Pentagon, and she's an actual news reporter. Jennifer Griffin describing the scene as, and look, she speaks to, I used to cover this beat. I walked the halls of the Pentagon for a decade. And you talk to people and cover the CIA and all that stuff. Jennifer Griffin explaining, based on conversations, what everybody is expecting just around the corner.
Right now, the Taliban has Taliban leaders that they're talking to in Qatar, some of them who were released from Gitmo, as we pointed out during the day. It is in Taliban propaganda interest to see the chaos that we saw at the airport, the American evacuation, the humiliating evacuation that looks very similar to the Soviet pullout back in 1979, which again spawned bin Laden, al-Qaeda, and the groups that the U.S. has been fighting for all these years. So right now, it's in the Taliban interest to look very civilized, to look peaceful, to look like they're not going to carry out retribution. But what happens when that last American C-17 lifts off sometime around August 31st, if not sooner? That's when the Taliban, who are already going house to house, taking names, looking for collaborators, that's when the soccer stadiums will be filled, and they'll start beheading women and making examples of those who worked with the Americans.
No, that's perfectly predictable. And by the way, they haven't maintained any sense of civility. They're murdering people all over the place. And if you're an American outside the wire, you're in big trouble. And there were the international community went in and built soccer stadiums in Afghanistan. Then the Taliban took over, and they used them like Roman days for public executions and beheadings while the crowd cheered Allahu Akbar and all that good stuff. But there are some Democrats there. Here's a headline. Transgender U.S. Air Force veteran trapped in Taliban takeover of Kabul. Now, I remember Ashley Babbitt was a 14-year Air Force veteran, too. Not transgender, however. Didn't get a lot of positive coverage from the news media. Trapped in Kabul, and here's a picture of the transgender veteran. As the U.S. government, as the government of Afghan President Ashraf Ghani collapsed, and he has now fled the country. He's been located in Qatar now, according to reports today. Chaos has descended in Afghan's capital. Among the Americans now trapped in the suburban areas of Kabul under Taliban control is Josie Thomas, 32, transgender government contractor for the U.S. State Department and former U.S. Air Force sergeant. Thomas, along with several others, are trapped at the diplomatic support facility known as Camp Alvarado, located on the outskirts of the capital city, where the airport is. So that's, the Democrat. Now, maybe they'll make an extra effort to get the transgender person up because, transgender military is one of the goals. And I hope that person does not fall into the hands of the Taliban. That's all that I have to say for that person. Jennifer Griffin yesterday from the Pentagon.
That is the picture that was presented in the Situation Room at the White House by the U.S. military commanders who did not want to pull out of Afghanistan, but they were ordered to do so, and now they are trying best as they can to airlift as many people out to save those who worked with the U.S. government, but it is unlikely that they will be able to get all 30,000, 68,000 who they've made promise to over the years.
30,000, 68,000, whatever it takes. That's just, the numbers are all over the place. They don't know. This is a complete debacle. Brett Baer Fox News anchor. I used to work with Bret Baier when he was covering the Pentagon, which he did for a brief period of time. Bret Baier.
From my analysis point of view, if the plan is that you're going to tell more than 10,000 Americans who are scattered throughout Afghanistan, Kabul and other cities, to make it to the airport and trust that the ring of Taliban fighters who surround the airport are suddenly going to get the word from their leaders to let them in and not have any problem, and that's the White House plan, that's stunning to me. And I think there are a number of things said in that press briefing which just shocked me.
Yeah, talking about Jake Sullivan and Jen Psaki. Headlines today, Taliban kill woman not wearing burqa after vowing to honor women's rights. And if you believed that, then you should, hand your daughters over to Jeffrey Epstein. Honestly, just extraordinary. Also out of Afghanistan, The Independent, Taliban confiscating weapons from civilians because, quote, they no longer need them. Again, the Democrats here taking weapons away from law-abiding citizens because we no longer need them, right? The Democrats here blowing up statues and tearing down statues. The Democrats here destroying education and the educational system in the United States of America. The Democrats here destroying the economy and the dollar. The Democrats here are the party of Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein and Matt Lauer. Where in the world is Matt Lauer? And all of these people. You maybe remember Joe Biden being asked a question about trusting the Taliban.
You trust the Taliban, Mr. President? You trust the Taliban, sir?
Is that a serious question?
It's absolutely a serious question. You trust the Taliban?
Is that a serious question? Now, the Washington Post headline, stooges for the Biden White House, Taliban allowing safe passage from Kabul. But the headlines below that are Taliban blocks routes to airport. Los Angeles Times captures graphic images of wounded Afghans, Taliban fighters using lethal weapons. Taliban kill woman not wearing burqa. Taliban confiscating weapons because they no longer need them. Democrats. Transgender U.S. Air Force veteran trapped. I hope that person gets out alive. And just amazing incompetence or something out of the Biden White House.
Hey, come on. You can't spend your whole life worrying about your mistakes. You fucked up. You trusted us.
You're listening to The Chris Plant Show.
Now, Joe Biden's approval rating, according to a new poll, has dropped 7 percentage points and now hit the lowest level so far in his presidency as the U.S.-backed Afghan government collapsed over the weekend. National opinion poll of Americans found 46% of American adults approved of Biden's performance in office, the lowest recorded in weekly polls since he took office. And it should be a lot lower than that, but give it time. Withdrawal from Afghanistan forces allies and adversaries to reconsider America's global role. That's the Washington Post, left-wing Biden sycophants. And Joe Biden is unraveling NATO and Western civilization in one fell swoop. NATO allies, the Irish Times. NATO allies rethink Listen to this. They urge rethink on alliance after Biden's unilateral Afghanistan exit. The Irish Times. And I got to tell you, also, the New York Times, intelligence warned of Afghan military collapse despite Biden assurances. Now, the intelligence community is leaking to their friends at the New York Times, and they're saying, no, we told them this would happen, and they're lying to you when they tell you that, oh, we couldn't have seen this coming, because it's exactly what the CIA told him was coming and what the Pentagon told him was coming. CIA warned of rapid Afghanistan collapse. So why did U.S. get it so wrong? NBC News reports. Let's get to this woman, because this is crazy. There's a civil rights attorney in the United States by the name of Kimberly Motley. She is a woman who's been fighting for women's rights in Afghanistan for the last several years, and she got these voicemails from a woman in Afghanistan that she knows.
I'm done. My life is over, and I don't know, I am not sure if I can keep your messaging anymore. Thank you so much for everything, Kim, but I think it doesn't gonna work out. And then you guys were super late to control things. It was way too late to control the situation. I'm sorry, but your efforts don't mean anything anymore.
She's going to say we're going to die, they're going to kill us.
Kim, the thing is that if we stay here for one more hour, there is going to be a massacre. I'm telling you that there is going to be a massacre. Everybody will be killed here.
And the Biden White House and the Washington Post are assuring us no trust in the Taliban. The Taliban will provide safe passage to Hamid Karzai International Airport. Debacle of historic proportion.